friends, does an apple a day actually keep the doctor away? So many diets tell you to stop eating them.
The apple they're eating is the wrong apple.
Apples are bad.
Keto, carnivore, low carb, they say it's just sugar. Bad weight, bad for blood sugar, bad if you have diabetes.
There is about twice as much sugar in an apple as there is in a donut.
But here's the truth. Apples actually do the opposite. They lower blood sugar. They help fight cancer. They boost your heart and help you live longer. So why are so many people scared of them? And what actually happens when you eat one? The answer might change the way you see fruit and your health forever. So let's start with the basics. A medium apple contains just under 100 calories. About 19 grams of that is made out of natural sugar, and 4 grams are made out of dietary fiber. That medium apple weighs approximately 182 grams. And guess what makes the bulk of that weight? Water. 156 grams of water. So really, are you eating an apple or are you drinking it? The remaining weight consists of other components like fiber and sugar, like carbohydrates, as well as a little bit of minerals and trace amounts of proteins and fat. It's a terrible way to get your protein and fat, which is actually why it's such a beneficial weight loss food, despite having 18.9 grams of sugar. 18.9 grams of sugar is approximately 4.5 teaspoons of sugar, or basically a little bit over a tablespoon of sugar. This is a tablespoon. The average person adds 2 teaspoons of sugar for every cup of coffee, right? 3 teaspoons makes a tablespoon. And that they drink every morning, at least a cup of coffee. But if you drank coffee with only sugar and ate no other food, would you raise or lower your blood sugars compared to drinking cream with sugar in your coffee? And if you've been following my videos, you know that eating the wrong fat will raise your blood sugars when you eat sugar, more than just eating sugar alone. And this was proven a long time ago with normal, healthy men who ate only fat or only protein or only sugar or no food at all for 2 consecutive days. And then they were all given the same amount of carbohydrates as a challenge to see how high their blood sugars would go. Basically, it's testing their metabolism after you train it. And those who fasted or who ate a high-fat diet, they actually had the highest blood sugar levels when they ate carbohydrates. And those who ate only sugar, including really junky refined white table sugar and flour products, they had the lowest blood sugars after eating the sugar. And when your blood sugar goes down, your insulin goes down. You become more insulin sensitive. And this makes it harder to gain weight. And when you become insulin sensitive, this means your muscles become more responsive to your glucose. It helps you store your blood sugars to keep the sugars out of your bloodstream, away from fat cells and your liver. And this is why eating even dried apple rings can help people lose weight, and even drinking 100% juice has been shown to help people lower their weight and not worsen their diabetes. Okay, I know you're thinking, how can that be? A cup of apple juice contains 24 grams of sugar, and it's so bad for diabetics. In fact, it's considered to be a diabetic time bomb and makes your diabetes worse. And for sure, if you drink a cup of orange juice, no matter if you have diabetes or not, your blood sugars will rise. And depending on how much insulin resistance you have, that juice will raise your blood sugars different amounts. And here's the irony of trending blood sugars, which so many influencers, they get the science wrong. Now, think about health in 2 time spans. You got the short-term benefits and the long-term benefits. And I think people would agree that short-term results, they don't necessarily equal to long-term results, right? For example, if I stop eating today, I will lose weight, right? And the longer I stop eating, the more weight I will lose. But I think everybody would agree that if you starve yourself, that's not a long-term healthy concept, correct? That in the long term, your body is going to suffer. And up to a certain point, if you don't ever eat food, you're not going to make it, even though you're losing weight. Okay, so now let's take that principle and apply it to everyday life. Apply it to blood sugars. We have such a glucose-centric society that now you're probably wearing a continuous glucose monitor even though you don't have diabetes, right? You're probably so worried about your glucose spikes that you're avoiding any carbohydrates, anything that can raise your blood sugar levels. Well, did you know that we have no data on glucose spikes? We really don't know how high is a bad number to hit. And so if you eat a piece of candy, that'll spike your sugar. And if you eat a piece of fruit, that'll spike your sugar. But I think most people understand fruit is not the same as candy, but we think it's as bad as candy because we're just looking at one parameter, sugar. But that is far from the truth. In fact, the more fruit you eat, the better your blood sugars will be. And this has been proven by clinical data. Even in people with diabetes. But blood sugar has become like such a negative word because it's been tied to bad metabolism. And so this is where the means doesn't always justify the ends. You can lower your blood sugars different ways and you can elevate your blood sugars in different ways. And it's having abnormally high blood sugars that is a problem. It is normal to have a blood sugar spike after you eat fruit. Everybody will get it. It's just how high it is dependent upon your insulin resistance and how much fruit you're eating. But if you don't check your blood sugars regularly enough, like with a continuous glucose monitor, or if you're not digesting your sugar, then that's a condition called malabsorption, which is another problem. You won't have a glucose spike. It's very normal to have a blood sugar spike after you eat anything with glucose. But what's abnormal is the length of time that blood sugar remains elevated. It's like being rich for 1 second versus being rich for the rest of your life. Makes a difference, doesn't it? So for someone with type 2 diabetes or even type 1 diabetes with insulin resistance, their blood sugar will be higher for much longer. And high blood sugars, of course, it causes damage. Your body will compensate by secreting more and more insulin. And when that happens, the insulin talks to the fat cells to then change that sugar to fat. So the duration of time of how high your blood sugars remain elevated is actually the problem. So as a biohack, I'm sure you've heard influencers tell you, eat your protein with your sugar or eat some fat with your carbohydrates. That'll delay blood sugar spikes. But it's simply that, delaying the inevitable blood sugar spike. Eventually, you will still have high blood sugars and it will stay higher longer if you eat fat, especially saturated fat. Now, it's like going broke. If you're broke for a second, it's no big deal. But if you're broke for a long time, it's a big deal, right? So just because you don't see a blood sugar rise within 2 hours, because that's the number that people tell you to check, but it goes up afterwards, don't you think you're still going broke? So if you're not checking your sugars the rest of the time, you really don't know what's happening in your body. And are you really getting healthier? Well, the problem is most people, they eat and drink a lot of beverages and food with a fat sugar combo. Let's take Starbucks caramel frappuccino, which is 60 grams of pure sugar, equivalent to 15 teaspoons of sugar or 5 tablespoons of sugar and 16 grams of fat. But worst of all, it has 10 grams of saturated fat. Turns out that the reason why keto people avoid sugar is because when you combine both fat and sugar, especially saturated fat, like the standard American diet, the SAD diet, you kill your metabolism for sugar. Saturated fat inhibits the body and your mitochondria from processing the sugar. So when you eat saturated fat along with sugary foods like breads and pastas and your favorite drink like that frappuccino, you gunk up your mitochondria so that your muscles don't help you out. Your muscles have a ton of mitochondria and your muscles are your number one metabolic organ that helps to buffer all your other organs. Unfortunately, saturated fat attacks your muscles and your pancreas and your liver. It's like you're turning out to be Kobe beef. All that marbleization, that is not good for you. There are 3 organs responsible for insulin sensitivity and glucose regulation. Your muscles, your pancreas, and your liver. And when you become insulin resistant, that means you're packing on fat into these organs. Now, you can do this simply by overeating calories, which all turn into saturated fat, whether that's overeating protein, carbs, or fat, or you can make it faster by eating saturated fat, whether that's animal fat or seafood or dairy, or even vegetable oils, coconut oil, they all have saturated fat. Or you can simply be overweight and your body will release saturated fat on its own from your own fat stores. Hence, losing weight, approximately 50% of your body mass, can help to reverse type 2 diabetes and potentially cure it if you continue the lifestyle. And to be frank with you, literally any diet that reduces calories can help you reduce weight. You simply have to eat less food. However, if you pick the right diet, you will shed weight in a healthy way and get health back in your metabolism a lot faster. And the key is insulin. If you can get your insulin lower, you will lose weight faster. And you can achieve this by avoiding all carbs, like a ketogenic diet, lowering your carbs, like a low carb diet or paleo diet, or just simply restrict carbohydrates yourself, like the junky carbohydrates, right? And stop eating junk food. And of course, if you don't eat all that sugar, specifically glucose, you're not going to need all that insulin, right? Your insulin levels go down, your fat packing goes down. But reversing that process is not just avoiding all carbohydrates. Glucose is in sugar and starches, all that refined pasta and breads. If you want to eat that still, you still have to keep your saturated fat down. But remember, just because you lose weight doesn't mean you're going to keep the doctor away. It's because if you don't get the weight loss right, you get micronutrient deficient, you get more inflammation, you end up seeing the doctor more. So it's not just enough to reduce sugar and junky foods. You have to get the right macronutrients and the right micronutrients so that you don't get into metabolic trouble. And hence, it's not good to hyperfocus on one metabolic pathway or one lab value. And simply because your body has millions of metabolic pathways besides insulin and sugar regulation. Okay, so now that we've established that adding fat to your morning coffee is not going to be a good idea if you're going to add sugar when it comes to weight gain. So let's now think about sugar in different forms and look at whether or not eating a whole apple is different than drinking a cup of coffee with table sugar, which is actually okay to eat. Okay, I have here a tub of table sugar and I have here some honey. Okay? And you can replace honey with agave or maple syrup, whatever processed sugary flavor agent that you want to talk about. Now, in order to understand why added sugar from table sugar or from whatever syrup that you like is different than a whole fruit, an apple, then let's do an experiment. Let's dissolve some sugar in some water. So this sugar, table sugar, is a fine powder, right? It's pretty powdery and it's really crystals. And we're going to take some and dissolve in water. And this honey is a liquid, all natural, right? This is actually a processed food. It's just processed by bees. And I find it quite interesting that we're willing to eat bee spit called honey, but we're not willing to eat the insect as proteins. Insects in general can be up to 60% protein, a much more sustainable and better protein source than chicken or beef. And actually, countries around the world, they actually eat insects. But here in America, we're grossed out. We stopped by New Zealand once, and in the airport, they had crickets. Ironically, those crickets were from California. And my son wanted to try some crickets. So I let him. And everybody stared at him. Like none of us tried it, but we all just stared at him. And he said it was just crunchy and salty. But I'm sure if you found an insect on your entree, you'd probably sue that restaurant. But if they gave you a plate of insect spit, you'd probably be glad to drink it. Isn't that odd? Let's do our experiment. So I have here a mason jar of water. Let me get another one. This is a cup of water, and I want to see how fast the sugar will dissolve, right? Okay, so I'm going to put a tablespoon of sugar in here, and then I'm going to put a tablespoon of honey. All right, ready? I'm going to put a tablespoon, the exact same amount, so we kind of take a look at how fast we can dissolve it. So the sugar is already dissolving, so it's actually getting a head start, but that's okay. It'll still work. It's pretty viscous, right? So it's like glucose syrup. That means it has water, and it means it dissolves in water, right? Because we know that this is water-based as opposed to fat-based, right? Honey is water-based. So let me see if I can get this honey, and let's see if I can get it to dissolve. This is pretty clear. There's a little bit of sugar left, right? I'm going to shake it up. I'm sure if I heated it up, it would dissolve faster. So this is honey, okay? And most of it has dissolved, right? Can you see it? That's honey. There's a little bit left that I just took out my fingers. And then this is sugar water. There's just a little bit left. So I dissolved an equivalent amount of processed sugar in water. So what do you think will happen if I had an apple and I cut it up and mix it with water? You think it'll dissolve? No, right? So if you drank this water, you're going to be drinking water and sugar. But if you drank the water in the apples, chunks of apples, and you didn't eat the apples, you're not going to get the sugar, right? Yeah, because you can't drink an apple. You have to actually chew it. And so when you drink a Starbucks Frappuccino, you can drink this so much faster than you can chew, correct? But when you eat an apple, you literally we have to spend time chewing. And guess what? Chewing has been proven to help people lose weight. The process of chewing activates satiety hormones so that you get full faster. So this is one reason why drinking your calories, whether it's sugar water, sugary syrup, whether that's honey, agave, maple syrup, or whatever fake syrup they put in a Starbucks Frappuccino, is going to help you gain weight so much faster. And when you drink dissolved sugar water, you will spike your sugars so much more rapidly. There is no fiber in honey. There's no protective casing to protect your blood sugars from being elevated. This is essentially pure sugar. And when you chew an apple, how much time is going to take you to chew an apple? I bet you can drink this a lot faster than chewing an apple. And you can also absorb the calories from this sugar water or this honey water so much faster than chewing an apple. And hence, if you want to naturally, truly delay the absorption and prevent high sugar spikes, chew your food. Eat a whole apple. This spreads out the amount of time in which your body gets exposed to the sugar. By putting a spat of butter in here, you just delay the absorption. You ultimately still get that sugar spike, all of it.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And if you put your apples through a juicer, you'll get pure apple juice. And that will elevate your blood sugars faster than chewing the apple. Now, if you did drink the apple juice, it would take less than 50 minutes for your blood sugars to rise. And apple juice is a way in which you can get out of a hypoglycemic or low blood sugar episode. But if you don't have low blood sugars, then you will just spike your blood sugars higher if you eat fat. Not necessarily in the same meal, but if you've been eating fat over the matter of a couple days. However, if you actually drink pure apple juice, unfiltered, you will have some soluble fiber that can actually help you get full faster and buffer that sugar in the apple. So fiber is not like this glass of sugar water or this honey water, right? When you have soluble fiber, it's not like drinking soda. It's not like drinking your Frappuccino. It comes with polyphenols and antioxidants and vitamins and minerals that is not in these kind of processed foods that will help delay your blood sugar spikes just by a little bit, not by a lot, especially if you're eating fat. So honey or bee spit doesn't have fiber. But if you drink apple juice, instead of soda versus honey water, sugar water, whatever, beverage that you like that you're adding sugar, you will notice that all of them will spike your blood sugars, probably about the same amount if you eat an equivalent amount of the drink. But the big difference is that over time, if you continuously stick to apple juice and not go to other added sugars, unfiltered ones, it can actually help you lose some weight when compared to these drinks. Now, of course, it's not going to help you as much as eating a whole apple. And it also depends on what else you're eating. Because if you're changing your food and adding more processed, highly refined foods with added sugar and added fat, then you just get more insulin resistance. And the reality is your calories and your metabolism will go up and down depending upon your mood and your activities. And you will pack fat on faster if you keep packing on saturated fat with refined sugars. You get more insulin resistance, and you can correct it within a matter of days. Apples are truly magic. Nobody can ever recreate an apple, but they're not the only magical food. But they can shift your internal chemistry over time in small and meaningful ways, just like other fruits. And when it comes to satiety, apples help quite a lot. And if you add apples to cookies or fruit juice and you compare them, identical calories, apples scored highest on fullness, lowest on blood sugars, and had the greatest reduction of calorie intake at the next meal. And this is likely the unique way apples expand your stomach in slow gastric emptying, making you full, reducing inflammation. And when you swap an apple for a processed snack, your granola bar, you're not just choosing fewer calories, you're choosing a different hormonal and metabolic response. When you eat whole apples, remember that sugar is trapped in water and dietary fiber. It doesn't just dissolve like sugar water. The nutrients are slowly released during digestion, and it'll probably take at least an hour for that apple to have any effect on your blood sugar, because you still have to chew through all that fiber. That fiber is both soluble and insoluble fiber in its entirety, packaged to perfection to protect you from that fructose in the apple, to help you decrease your blood cholesterol levels. And this is because apple fibers, they trap bile, which is made out of cholesterol. Your body secretes bile to digest fat, right? So you're trying to digest your fat, and the apple fibers swoop in and they form a filter to trap that fat so that it just gets pooped out. And the more you poop, the lower your cholesterol will get, and the healthier you become. And remember, fiber turns on satiety hormones that turns off your appetite. So you eat less food. And whenever you eat less calories, you lose weight. Remember the last time you got sick and you had no appetite? Lost some weight, right? And then when you're gaining weight, you have a ferocious appetite. Or maybe you're snacking all the time. So the key is, how do we reduce our appetite, reduce our cravings, and still fill our nutritional bucket? And this isn't just a small, finite point in time. This should be our lifestyle, right? Because once you stop doing it, the weight comes back. That is called yo-yoing. We don't want to do that. And a lot of times people aren't eating because they're trying to nourish their bodies, or they're trying to get healthy foods, right? We eat based on our mood and our cravings. And wouldn't it suck if your bank account assets were dependent upon your mood? What if every time you're in a negative mood, you lose money? And every time you're happy, you earn money? We would all strive to be happy, right? But how many of you would be bankrupt? And how many would actually be billionaires if it was tied to our mood? Hopefully your financial assets are not dependent upon your mood, but I bet your health assets are, because you may not realize that you eat based on your mood until you are aware that your mood drives your cravings and your eating habits. And then you can do something about it. And unfortunately, many people don't realize that until it's too late, until they already have metabolic disease. But it's never too late to change. And the neat thing about food is that when you eat the right foods, you don't just eat for you. You're actually feeding an army of friends. You have friends that travel with you everywhere you go. 100 trillion of them. They live in your gut. They're called your gut microbiome. And if they don't get food, well, they get kind of angry and they turn around and they eat the lining that separates you from them. And this is one way to get an ulcer or to get a leaky gut. I didn't used to believe leaky gut was actually a thing until I realized, I see a lot of complications from leaky gut, bacteremia and infections from leaky gut. People have heart valve infections, they have joint infections, bone infections. A lot of that is from leaky guts. And I'm not even including all the gut abscesses I see, from liver abscesses to, like diverticulitis, appendicitis. Many people get these life-threatening infections. Diverticulitis, endocarditis, osteomyelitis, septic arthritis. These are just fancy words saying you have inflammation in a particular body that's due to an infection. There are 2.8 million drug-resistant infections that occur every year in the United States alone. And 7.7 million people globally actually don't make it due to a serious bacterial pathogen that could have been preventable. Translocation is a term that we use to describe when a bacteria can cross the gut barrier into your body. 33 bacterial pathogens is responsible for half of our mortality linked to sepsis. And yet we have 100 trillion gut microbes waiting to help us out. And if you can suppress those 33 pathogenic bacteria, wouldn't you want to? The best way to do this is to build healthy microbes that protects your gut, your body, from all these catastrophic itises. And the only way to do that is not through a probiotic, it's through feeding the good guys and starving the bad guys. So when you have an apple, you're eating food, fermentable fiber, to feed your good gut microbes, to prevent you from having bad gut microbes. The fermentable fiber in an apple is mostly in the form of pectin, which is great for feeding your gut bacteria. But that's only the beginning. Apples are loaded with polyphenols like quercetin, chlorogenic acid, catechins, and phyllorizin, compounds that are all anti-inflammatory that work synergistically together. They are antioxidants and potentially have anti-cancer effects. Have you heard that colon cancer rates are astronomically climbing in young adults? Typically, cancer takes at least a decade to start before it becomes noticeable. And young people in their 30s have metastatic colon cancer and they're not surviving. That means cancer started in their childhood, probably in their teens, and in their 20s. And you'd have to be living under a rock if you don't think that something's wrong with our food. So if all you eat are highly processed calories and pay no attention to the abundance of gut microbes that produce anti-inflammatory cancer protective molecules, then you're missing out in health. Whole plants like an apple have a boatload of health because it helps your friends keep you healthy. So when you're eating an apple, you're not just getting sugar, calories, and even micronutrients. You're feeding an entire internal ecosystem that protects your body from blood sugar rises, from pathogenic bacteria, from cancer. Right? You don't want your colonic cells to turn cancerous. That pectin travels down to your colon where it's fermented into short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. That strengthens your intestinal barriers, helps you lower systemic inflammation. It helps you poop. It communicates with your brain. In fact, studies show that people who eat apples regularly have higher levels of beneficial bacteria like bifidobacteria and Akkermansia mucinophilia, species associated with better blood sugar control, reduce obesity risk, and even improve brain function. And despite the fear around sugar, apples have a surprisingly low glycemic load. Unlike sugar and honey. This means that they don't cause the rapid insulin spikes you'd expect from their sweetness. And again, it's because it's packaged in fiber along with water and polyphenols that work together synergistically to slow down your glucose absorption. It blunts the insulin response and support metabolic stability. And a study found from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that people who ate apples daily had a significantly reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, whereas those who drank apple juice actually had an increased risk. Because they're not just drinking apple juice, they're eating other foods, right? So it's whole fruit that should be eaten, not parts and pieces of fruit, even though it's still better than sugar water and honey. And this is where we're confusing whole fruits from juice waters with added sugar like lemonade. I mean, how is lemonade healthy? It's just full of added sugar, right? No matter what you add in it. And beyond blood sugar, apples also have a unique ability to lower LDL oxidation, a critical step in keeping your blood vessels clean, preventing atherosclerosis. And in one randomized trial, participants who ate 2 apples a day saw a reduction in oxidized LDL particles, which are far more dangerous than plain LDL cholesterol. But don't shave that skin off. Apple skin contains fiber and so many protective polyphenol compounds. That red color is protective. Then you have quercetin, which acts as an antihistamine as well as an anti-inflammatory agent and has been studied for its ability to inhibit cancer cell growth, particularly in the breast, lung, and colon. And lung health, well, that's another overlooked benefit. Multiple observational studies show a strong correlation between apple intake and better lung function, even in smokers. And we don't quite know why. It may be because of its antioxidant load, which reduces oxidative stress in airway tissues. Or it could be because they're changing their gut microbiome, which causes lower inflammation too. And then there's the longevity effect. A large meta-analysis reported that higher intake of flavanol-rich foods like apple, they were associated with lower risks of all-cause mortality. How did it do it? I'm sure it has to do with lower inflammation, better vascular function, improved detoxification, and just more resilient mitochondria. And here's the nuance. How you eat that apple matters, right? Eating it raw, whole is ideal. Peeling it removes so many beneficial fibers and polyphenols. Cooking it, especially in pies, and then you add sugar to it, whether it's table sugar or honey or maple syrup, it destroys the beneficial effects of your apple and it adds excess stress of inflammation. And apple juice, that's stripped of fiber, concentrated in fructose, and metabolized rapidly by the liver. It's metabolically closer to these things than whole fruit, right? So that's why we need to stick to whole fruit. And if you don't like the pesticides, invest in organic apples. Since apples are consistently ranked in the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen list for pesticide residues. If your budget is concerned, well, scrub that peel, right? Wash it in baking soda. But if you peel it, you will lose a lot of the benefits. And of course, the type of apple matters. Granny Smith, they are lower in sugar and higher in polyphenols than the sweeter varieties like Fuji or Red Delicious. But really, any variety eating whole regularly can help you avoid the doctor and can offer meaningful health benefits. And what's more, the apple isn't just a standalone superfood. It's just a signal. It represents a broader pattern of eating, one that emphasizes whole food, high in fiber, high in plant phytochemicals to slow down digesting the carbohydrates. It also represents eating low fat. So an apple a day isn't just about eating the apple. It's about shifting towards foods that support gut metabolism, your gut integrity, insulin sensitivity, vascular health, mitochondrial health, and cellular resilience. And that's why population studies consistently show that the higher intake of fruit, particularly apples, is associated with lower risk of chronic disease. But let's be honest. If the rest of your diet is ultra-processed food, fried in seed oils, loaded with refined carbs and sugary drinks, an apple a day isn't going to do much, right? It's not going to undo all that damage because it's not about detoxing. It's not about cleansing your body. It's about building healthy habits, healthy dietary patterns. And in a culture that glamorizes complicated solution, maybe what we need is more simplicity. Fruit that you can find anywhere and eat with minimal preparation. Food that doesn't need marketing, that doesn't require a label, and that offers real benefits with very little downside. And if your apple crowds out processed snacks, stabilizes your blood sugar, feed your gut microbiome, and protect your cells, then yeah, you're going to be seeing the doctor a lot less. And that's not just folk wisdom. That's modern science catching up to ancient common sense. Multiple studies link apple consumption to reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, lung decline, and all-cause mortality. Again, it's not just apples, it's a lot of fruit. But the benefit depends on how you eat them, how much you're eating in whole apple form. Remember, apples are far more superior than juice, better than apple sauce. And eat them with the peel. It preserves the most amount of fiber and antioxidants. An apple is so much better than a protein bar. It delivers so much more satiety. It has fewer metabolic disruptions and long-term health support. Protein bars do not have this evidence. But apples are not miracle cures. If your diet is full of processed oils, sugar, refined carbs, one apple just won't cancel out all that effect. So while the phrase might sound quaint, modern science actually backs it up. An apple a day, eaten whole with its skin, just might keep the doctor away. But there's so many other foods that have even more metabolic and immune power. If you want to learn about those, watch the next video.